Well, hey, everybody. Well, with that introduction, let's just keep in mind, Jeff is the one that asked me to come up here and do this, so if you don't like it, blame him. Yeah, so I took it as the you wait till the congressional update for the last day of the conference, just because he wants to make sure you all stayed, for the entire conference. So, yeah, so I wanted to just spend a few minutes on usually I come up here and we're spending a fair amount of time gnashing our teeth, complaining, and I'm trying to put lipstick on a pig about what's going on in Congress and how they won't come up and help us. Well, today I'm up here to give everybody a pat on the back and and have a little celebration, because after 11 years, 6 different Congresses, 3 different presidents, and as I walked in, I saw the Joe Schick experience out there. I realized that there's also been 3 different postal solutions leadership at Quad since we started working on this bill. So, I joked a lot during the time when it was started that, on my first day at Quad, I started in August of 2010. Joel sat me in his office and meeting him, and he says to me, your number one job is to fix the Postal Service. And it took me 11 years to do it. So either, that tells you something about Joel's, ability to judge, talent, or my ability to do it. And I'm also trying not to take a lot of offense to the fact that after 11 years, it was the 1 year that I couldn't go to DC to lobby in person that we got it done. The 117th Congress finally did pass the postal reform bill. Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney was our champion at the time, and the ranking member James Comer. They were instrumental in getting this done. But I tell you, there were a lot of folks along the way. Well, not as many as we would have hoped. But I do have a message from Senator Baldwin, who was she was with us before it was cool to be with postal reform. You listen to a lot of the speeches right now from when the debate was going on. And there was a whole lot of people who seemed to make wanted it to be known that they were with us from the beginning, that I had never heard of before. But Senator Baldwin was with us right away, right before it was cool to be with us. So we have a quick message from Senator Baldwin.
Hello, I'm Senator Tammy Baldwin, and I wish I could be joining all of you in person to discuss the complex issues facing the United States Postal Service and the printing, paper, and mailing industries. I want to recognize Joel Quadracci for his leadership in the mailing industry and at Quad. Joel has testified before Congress on 4 separate occasions. That's a very brave task, I might add. I also want to recognize the efforts of the Coalition for a 21st Century Postal Service for their work advocating for the postal industry and their workers. And finally, I want to thank all of you who have helped get the recent legislation, the Postal Service Reform Act, across the finish line. The United States Postal Service, the printing and paper and mailing industries serve a vital role in our country. Citizens rely on these industries to get their prescriptions, their paychecks, their utility bills, and essential communications, and more. Businesses rely on it to communicate with their customers, get their goods to consumers, and market their services and products. But the United States Postal Service and industry at large has faced significant challenges in recent years and desperately needed reform. In recent years, the U.S. Postal Service has reported a decline in first-class mail, advertising mail, and revenues. And we have already seen the impact of these challenges. Rural areas in particular are suffering from slower delivery. With all of your help, we passed the Bipartisan Postal Services Reform Act, and President Biden signed the bill into law, putting his stamp of approval on it. The new law will help save the U.S. Postal Service about $49 billion over 10 years through structural reforms, increasing transparency, and facilitating timely deliveries. The reform balances the budgetary concerns of the agency with the interests of Wisconsin and America's mail customers, small businesses, and postal employees. I am proud to have a long history of supporting the Postal Service and helping protect its 245-year tradition of mail delivery. I'm excited to see what the future holds for the printing, paper, and mailing industries. I look forward to working together to keep our country moving forward. Thank you.
So, like I said, she was with us when we were still trying to get the ball rolling on this, and so it's been a good partner all the way along. So, as she said, the bill passed. You don't see very many votes that look like that when you got a House vote of 342 to 92 and 79 votes in the Senate. I mean, 79 votes in the Senate. That is an accomplishment. We won't talk about the 92 and the 19, but what can you do? And then the president signed the bill into law on April 6th. Now, I wanted to spend a little time on the journey and how we got here, and I got to tell you, I send out some updates to the folks at Quad just on how things are going, and somehow I obviously jinx us every time I do it, because I'll think I got something going and it's about to happen, and then something doesn't. So in between, you see that there's a month gap between the House vote and the Senate vote. Now this was geared up. That was February 8th. It was then going to go to the House. I think that was a Thursday. It was going to go to the House the very next Tuesday, the Senate the very next Tuesday, and everything was greased and ready to go. And we had the floor time. And this was before, we had the Ukrainian invasion hadn't quite happened yet, but it was being rumored, and but we were like, we got to get this done, because if Congress gets engaged on that, we might not, who knows? We might just lose our time. And so we got it on the schedule, and I went, and then we went off on our weekend, and on Monday morning, there was so many emails and text messages on my phone when I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, what happened over the night? And they realized that the House sent the wrong version of the bill to the Senate. So they voted on something, and then they sent over to the other House something that hadn't been voted on. So they obviously can't do that. Then they gave some of our opponents an opportunity to start messing with the bill and made some objections. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And at that point, I just decided we were cursed. This wasn't going to happen, and I was going to quit. But they were able to work together, the two houses. They finally figured it out. We got it over to the Senate, and as you can see, the vote went pretty smoothly after that. So. And oh, by the way, I'm not sure, I put this on here, I'm not sure if I'm the guy on his shoulders or the guy being sat on that picture. I can't quite decide, but, right. Okay, so sort of well, before I get into what's in the bill, the other thing I wanted to talk about is the importance of everybody in this room and how we got this done. For basically 10 years, we screamed from the mountaintop as loud as we could about the impacts of postal rates and what they were doing to all of your businesses, and what that was going to do to the mail volume, and it really fell on deaf ears. Tammy was about the only one who was listening to us, and that's because she has so much paper and printing in the state, she almost had to. Most people, it just didn't move the needle for them, and we couldn't quite figure out why. It didn't matter if it was a Democrat or Republican. You figure the Republicans would listen to that business argument better, and it just didn't move the needle. So we decided to go out, we did some surveying to try to figure out what is going to be a better message, and maybe even who's the better messenger. And I remember when we sat down with a pollster, and it wasn't just Quad, this was an industry-led opportunity here, and the pollster was so excited to tell us about this survey that she had, because it showed that this great, in her mind, very, this robust support of the public for the Postal Service. And how that, she gets on the headline she's got is that 73% of the country either strongly or very strongly supported the Postal Service. And it was a Zoom call, of course, and so everybody's head that was on the call, everybody's hands went to their head, like, you gotta be kidding me. And she's like, what's happening? This is really, the federal government doesn't have anybody with that kind of approval ratings. And somebody told her, it's like, well, but that number the last time we did this was 90+%. And this was post the election, post, the mail-in balloting, things like that. And so this was very concerning about whether or not we were going to have the public support behind our efforts. If we couldn't get them to listen to the businesses, the public was our next best line of defense. So, but we took that challenge and we went out there with and it turned out to be an opportunity, because really it was the people were telling us in that survey is that yes, they were upset with the Postal Service in terms of what they were hearing about it, but ultimately they were upset because they loved the Postal Service and they saw it on the decline and didn't want that to be the case. And so we put together a social media campaign to target key senators and key House members, and it really sort of have the people take the fight on for us, because we needed a new messenger, we needed a new message. And I tell you, I have no doubt this is the thing that moved the needle the most. We had 12,000 what we called advocates, individual people that took the time to click on our messages and hear what we had to say. And that turned into over 40,000 messages into Congress, with 3,000 of those just being through organic circulation, where it wasn't even us pushing and paying to push for those contacts. It happened on their own because people were talking to their neighbors and friends and what have you. So 40,000 messages. The highlight of that was Senator Rob Portman out of Ohio. And we talk about, you need these champions, and we talk about, the chairwoman and the ranking member, but the next, and Senator Baldwin, but the next one was Rob Portman. Rob Portman's a middle-of-the-road senator, Republican senator out of Ohio, and had always been telling us that he supported Postal Service reform, but I can never get the guy to do anything to actually make that happen. Until almost 1,200 messages came into his office because of the social media campaign, and suddenly he was our biggest champion and was in leadership meetings fighting for postal reform, fighting to get it on the board. And it was those 1,200 messages that turned him around. It worked so well, we had other members call us to say, enough, we got it, we're with you, stop the messages, we're coming, we're gonna vote for it, you got us. And then it didn't, and then we went to our stakeholders, so, all of you and others that are in the industry, and there was almost 14,000 letters, just actual traditional, on paper letters that we wrote to members of the Senate and the House. And all of that combined, finally, Congress decided we're going to listen to the 7 million people that make a living in this industry and the $1 trillion of economic activity, and we passed the bill. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes, just really congratulating you all on what's in there, but I also just want to make sure everybody does know, we live this on a daily basis in my world, but just make sure everybody does know what's in this bill that everybody's so excited about. And it is $50 billion over the next 10 years in savings for the Postal Service. The biggest one is on the healthcare reforms. This is where, if you remember, the pre-funding of healthcare, where the Postal Service needed to pre-fund retiree healthcare to the tune of $5.5 to almost $6 billion a year, just on that one payment alone, which of course they started to not make because they didn't have it, but it stayed on the balance sheet. And so every time they went to the regulatory commission to talk about rates, it was a liability that was out there that they had to account for, right? So it was always, even though they weren't making the payment, it was putting pressure on the postage stamp along the way. So the bill forgives those previous payments and makes sure they didn't have to make them up. And the debt that the Postal Service had had taken on from the Treasury to sort of set them back at zero and in a good place to go. It assures the 6-day integrated delivery system. Right? This had become a normal thing, but it really did it was in the appropriation bills every year. And so there was always a little question of whether or not 6-day delivery was going to stay. And there was always questions of whether or not it would. Well, now it's codified in the statute. We've got a 6-day delivery that's not going away. There's a small newspaper rate reduction for those that use the mail to try to help stem the tide of the troubles that the mailing industry is having, which of course allows for additional opportunities for retail inserts and things like this to try to keep that a viable delivery system for us. And then there's things on the flat cost to ensure that the actual costs are reflected in those catalog rates and magazine rates, right? So Hamilton's over there. We know that we think there's a misunderstanding of whether there's assigned costs that really shouldn't be there. Well, we're now going to find out for sure where we're really at. And then there's things in there about the shared services with state and local. This is a smaller piece, but it allows them to, if someone wants to get a fishing license, hunting license, they can do that at the Postal Service and a few other things. But what I just wanted to actually point out too, what it does not include, because early versions of this bill over those 11 years and 6 Congresses, the bill always had a 2.15% rate increase built into it, right? And that was going to be our skin in the game. This was before the PRC review and had been done, and and now the new rate structures. But it always had that built in, and so it took some effort to take that to get that out. Now that the rates are gone, because otherwise this would have been a bill that we very much would have might have had to oppose if we had to sit with a 2% increase on top of what's going on with the rate increase that's going on right now. So the fact that we were able to get that out is also a really good thing. So take some time, enjoy this, because it's hard to get things through Congress, as we can see, and even when you have a lot of support from the public, getting these guys to act, it's a challenge. So what's next for postal reform? We're not done, right? I mean, and this was part of the message we gave to Congress in the last days, was that don't think because you've done this and it took this long that we can wait another 11 years and 6 Congresses, and hopefully not 3 more postal solutions with leadership at Quad to get it done, to get the rest of it done. Because what really happened here is we solved the balance sheet problems. But we haven't, as we heard from the Postmaster General the other day, right? We haven't solved their cost problem, right? They still have declining volume and increasing, delivery points, which is driving their costs, and a handful, and their operational issues and everything else that we've been hearing about. So those things need to keep on working. We've got we have technical things about how much they're contributing to the retirement system for the employees, that they're over contributing. But those are all things that we're paying for, that you all are paying for. So we got to get it right, because it's not just an accounting trick at the OMB. That's real money coming out of your pockets on the postage stamp. And then there is an effort underway to have the PRC do another review right now. I believe Postcom, you're part of this, and has put together the petitions and others to ask for various groups to get them to reconsider, because there's been a lot that's happened since the PRC decision came down. You've got the impacts of the pandemic that have to be talked about, but you also have the increase in parcel delivery. You got $10 billion that Congress gave to deal with COVID-related activities, and then you've got the passage of the Reform Act that have all, in some way, shape, or form, improved the financial position of the USPS. And so we want to, really think that there's a lot of logic that the Regulatory Commission and the board really ought to go back and look, and do they need as much authority as they have, and if nothing else, put some pressure on them to not use all of the authority that they now have. Now, we'll see how that goes, in terms of their willingness to take on that task. But so so this is just now us asking them to do it. We are working with Congress through the appropriation process in a way that would mandate that they go back and do another review, taking these issues into consideration. Now, if we think the postal reform single bill is fraught with troubles, you can just imagine what it's like to be part of the appropriation process in Congress when they, and this is a broken process, right? That's just, we lurch from one continuing resolution to the other, and so we need them to actually get to that work done in order for this to be in there. But it is something we're working on as we go. So we're trying to celebrate the fact that the bill passed and enjoy that, but also know that there's more to do and keep their focus on what's next. So I think that was it for what I had in terms of what's going on in Congress right now. I mean, obviously we can talk about anything you want in Congress if you want to talk about something else, but happy to take any questions and see what I can do to answer them. Oh, come on, people always have questions about Congress. Can't possibly be none. Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. We'll get you a little bit more on time. Thanks a lot.